Did you know that the world's 26 richest people own as much wealth as the poorest 3.8 billion people combined? That's half the planet. Let that sink in for a moment. It's a statistic so wild it almost sounds fake. But it's real. And it points to one of the biggest, most complicated questions of our time. Why are some countries fantastically rich while others remain devastatingly poor? This isn't about some people being lazy and others being hardworking. The story is so much bigger than that. It's a messy tangle of history, geography, politics, and power that has shaped the world we live in today, creating a vast and often invisible chasm between nations. So what do we even mean by rich and poor countries? It's not just about having fancy cars or big houses. Economists often use a measure called gross domestic product, or GDP per capita. Basically, you take all the stuff a country produces and sells in a year and divide it by the number of people living there. A high GDP per capita, like in Switzerland or Norway, usually means better access to healthcare, longer life expectancies, stable governments, and more opportunities for education. It means roads get paved, the water is clean, and when you flip a switch, the lights almost always come on. On the other side of the divide, a low GDP per capita, like in the Democratic Republic of Congo or Burundi, tells a very different story. It often means life is a daily struggle. Access to basic healthcare is a luxury, not a right. This isn't a moral failing, it's the result of a complex set of circumstances, a kind of lottery of birth, where the place you are born can dramatically determine the opportunities you will have for your entire life. You can't talk about global inequality without talking about history. Specifically, you have to talk about colonialism. For several hundred years, a handful of European powers like Great Britain, France, Spain, and Belgium went out and conquered huge chunks of the world. They didn't do this to share their culture or build friendships. They did it for resources. They wanted rubber, cotton, gold, diamonds, and cheap labor. They drew borders on maps that paid no attention to the people who actually lived there, lumping rival ethnic groups together and splitting others apart. This sowed the seeds of conflict that, in many cases, are still raging today. Think about it like this. Imagine someone breaks into your house, steals all your valuable stuff, rewires the electricity so it only powers their house next door, and then, after 100 years, they leave. But before they go, they tell you and the person who used to be your rival that you now have to share the house and figure it all out. You wouldn't be in a very good position to succeed, would you? That's a massive oversimplification, of course, but it gets at the core idea. Colonial powers extracted wealth and resources, but they rarely invested in the long-term infrastructure, education, or stable political systems that they themselves were building back home. When colonized nations gained independence, many were left with economies designed to serve their former rulers. History casts a long shadow, but what happens inside a country today is just as important. Let's talk about institutions, the rules and organizations that structure a society. In a rich country like Germany, you can generally trust that the courts will enforce contracts. This trust allows people to invest and innovate. Contrast that with a country where corruption is rampant. Then there's education and health, what economists call human capital. Healthy, educated people are more productive. Countries like South Korea invested massively in education after the Korean War to a global economic powerhouse. They understood that their greatest resource was the brains of their people. Having a lot of oil or diamonds doesn't automatically make a country rich. Sometimes it leads to the resource curse. No country is an island. How a country engages with international trade can really make or break its economy. Countries specialize in what they do best, and then they trade with each other. However, the global trading system isn't always a level playing field. Rich countries and powerful international corporations often set the rules. Poor countries often find themselves stuck in a low-value trap exporting raw materials which don't fetch high prices. A cautious hope. Is the world destined to be forever split between the haves and the have-nots? The answer is complicated but hopeful. Extreme poverty has been falling dramatically. Hundreds of millions in countries like China and India have been lifted out of poverty thanks to rapid economic growth. Countries that succeed invest in health and education. They create stable governments that protect property rights. Think of Vietnam, which has gone from being a war-torn, impoverished nation to a buzzing hub of manufacturing in just a few decades. Climate change threatens the poorest countries. Political instability and conflict continue to plague many regions. The wealth gap is one of the greatest moral and economic challenges of our time. With the right mix of internal reform and international cooperation, it is possible to slowly begin to close the gap.